welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have Ben Gorman from Wyoming, and we're going to get a Elk Rut Report from Ben. Ben has just come off a fantastic hunt in Wyoming where he harvested a 390-inch bull with his bow, and so I thought he would be a great person to give us some insight on what's going on in Wyoming. Ben, how you doing?
Oh, pretty good, Jay. Yourself?
Oh, doing great. I'm here actually in Jackson, Wyoming, and I understand you're in Casper, Wyoming. Why don't you tell me and the listeners a short version bio about yourself and how you got into all this, and then I want to ask you some questions about your hunt.
Okay. Well, yeah, Ben Gorman. I'm a Wyoming native. I live here in Casper, Wyoming. I work full-time in the oil field. And then I'm an ops manager for an oil field service company, and then usually spend a good majority of my time out in the hills doing something in the outdoors, you know. Shed hunting and fishing and hunting are kind of my passions in life, and something that I probably owe my dad for getting me into those things, and that's definitely continued through the rest of my life. And we own a small little company called Shednex LLC, just kind of a small apparel company. That really just helps promote the outdoors and promote public land hunting, and we're trying to do some cool things with that, and we have kind of a cool ambassador group started with that company, and a lot of good kind of hardcore hunters throughout the state of Wyoming. So something to really represent the state of Wyoming for a hunting perspective and really shed a positive light on everything and get more people involved in the outdoors. So
fantastic. That sounds great. Looks like you had a phenomenal hunt, public land, DIY hunt, harvested a big giant bull. I'm looking on your Instagram. For the listeners out there, it's 307 Horn Hunter is Ben's Instagram handle. Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about the hunt, and had you been watching that bull, or give us the lowdown on it?
Well, I'll tell you what, Jay, we definitely came as a pleasant surprise when I saw that I had drawn this tag. I've had some of the worst luck when it comes to drawing tags in my home state here. In 21 years of applications, I've actually only drawn one other limited quota tag, so I've gotten pretty well experienced with hunting in general, and then also have done some out-of-state hunting when it comes to elk too. So, but finally drew this tag. I hadn't hunted it before. I've been hunting there with friends, and actually spent some time hunting that unit with my dad when I was a kid, which was kind of a cool backstory behind that. But I was really torn. I'm a mule deer fanatic, and that's what I usually spend most of my time as far as scouting and everything in the summer. And I was like, man, you know, I'm gonna have to really change game plans here. And if I only have X amount of weekends, usually I spend all those during the summer scouting mule deer on general tags and on public land. But this year, you know, I had a lot of people telling me, you know, you can general mule deer hunt in a year. This is a great elk tag, and I would focus on that if I were you. So, yeah, I kind of had to take that advice, and we ended up spending 5 full weekends scouting this area. Had a ton of camera work done. We have cameras spread out across all different places in the unit, and really trying to focus on some of the intel that we got from family and friends and biologists and everything else, and kind of went up there and checked cameras every weekend. My friend Pete and we hauled in a couple tree stands also to give us some other options, and pretty sure we hauled tree stands further back in there than anybody has before. Definitely an unreasonable amount of miles. So just to give us a lot of options so we can hunt on the ground, hunt out of a tree stand and brush in ground blinds if we had to. And we were getting a lot of really good shooter bulls that we were pretty excited about. And what was really kind of frustrating is everything kind of disappeared off the cameras about August 24th. That was the last time.
So Ben, at that point, when they started disappearing, they were obviously hard antlered. So you had really good intel and velvet. And when you say disappeared, do you know, in Arizona, our bulls just moved to their rutting grounds. Do you think it was just a function of they just moved?
Yeah, and we ended up finding out they kind of went to a back part of the place we were hunting that we didn't know about. We figured that we had every water source kind of mapped out, so we didn't expect anything to move. But yeah, you're 100% right, Jay. As soon as that velvet came off, I've always said never trust a mule deer or an elk with as soon as that velvet rubs. So yeah, they all kind of disappeared, and we didn't know where the heck they went. We still had a bunch of elk on camera, but just some of our shooter bulls we had picked out kind of disappeared. So I backpacked in there solo on September 1st. Spent a couple days hunting on. I tried the tree stand thing on some of the tree stands that we had, and wasn't having good luck, and wasn't having those good bulls hit that anyway. So ended up getting on a couple of the good bulls that we had picked out on the ground, and just typical, just one opportunity after the other, just couldn't quite make it happen. And what was really odd to me is that I wasn't expecting is the first day we got in there, September 1st, we had bulls lighting off at 2 p.m. and
bugling from their beds, really?
Yeah.
Or were they up and moving?
I think they were just getting out of their beds and getting up and moving, and I ended up backpacking in there in shorts and a t-shirt, and halfway from the truck to where I was going to camp, I ended up putting on a stock in my shorts and t-shirt before I ever even threw on camo. And
really?
I had a good bull bugling just up in the trees above me. So I thought that was kind of an anomaly the first day, but it turned out, those first 6 days of the season, we found the same thing in that area every single day between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. They were up going absolutely bananas.
And it was hot, Ben. I mean, I got here on September 1st in Jackson, and it was 90 not quite 90, but almost 90 degrees here.
It was absolutely brutal. In fact, for the first 5 days, there was not a single cloud in the sky, not a breath of wind, and it was hotter than heck. I mean, I debated hunting in my shorts a couple of those days because it was just terrible. And but it didn't seem to matter. I don't know. You kind of gave me a list at the topics on here of some abnormalities that we saw, but my buddy Sean came up, and we've never seen anything like that in my whole life. I mean, and it was like clockwork every single day, and it was the same day we killed this bull. Right about 2:30, everything went bananas right in the middle of the day, and we were talking herd bulls bugling, every 10, 15 seconds nonstop till 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. And it was great for an elk hunter. We just didn't know what to expect, and it allowed you to elk hunt all day long and chase bugles all day long. But the mornings were slow. Afternoons were quite a bit better, and those elk were definitely up on their feet really early. We kind of joked around on wonder if the dang eclipse that came through here messed something up. But
yeah. Do you think it's a function of a bunch of Wyoming got a lot of precipitation and a lot of snowfall? How much of it do you think is, the high country, what were the feed conditions? I mean, were there any indicators that would show that, that they would be going off, early, so to speak, September 1st and just tearing it up? Anything out there that you saw in conditions that might have spurred that?
Well, they definitely got good feed, and in the area that we were hunting, they got great moisture, both for elk activity and for antler growth, really, in that last half of July and first week of August there when it really mattered. So that could be a function of it. I don't have an explanation for it, but everything. It was also full moon that week too, so full moon, the sun was out, 80+ degrees, and not a cloud in the sky. And elk were going bananas in the middle of the day. So
that's unreal. So you found that bull on the 6th day and got him killed that same day, or how did that play out?
We found him he hit our camera again on the 3rd, and then we ended up spotting him on the 5th, the night of the 5th, and we had done a little intel that night, and our cameras kind of worked out in reverse for us. We didn't end up finding him on camera up top where we saw him on the 5th, but we knew that if they were hanging out in this back chunk of this basin, that they had to be getting water somewhere, and if they weren't hitting our camera anywhere, then we figured we had to have missed a water source in all of our scouting. So we really spent some time on that 5th day going and scouting one little chunk that we hadn't been into to see if we had missed a water source, and sure enough, we found a really good wallow in there that was completely tore up. It would have really made sense for where we saw him the night before, and we decided to kind of put all our eggs in one basket, stop the the ground game that we had been doing and sit that wallow the next day. We knew this. We saw this bull the night before. Sean saw him and I didn't, and he actually had about a 360 satellite and just beat the crap out of him, shoved him into the ground and ran him off the mountain away from those cows. And I said, man, I'd be perfectly happy with any 340, 350, 360, anything like that. Bulls that come in, you know, if we can go sit that wallow, there's got to be a chance. Even if we got to sit it for 2 days, then something's got to come in and drink. So we sat it, and sure enough, just like clockwork that day, we made sure we were in there about 11 a.m. and those bulls lit up, you know, what sounded like two mature bulls kind of on the backside of the hill right about 2 o'clock, 2:30, and they went bananas all the way until 4:30, and Sean and I were sitting in a little ground blind that we had brushed in on that wallow, and we kind of got antsy about 4:30, and I sent him up to the top of the hill and said, why don't you just run up there and see what those elk are doing, and see if we can tell if they're moving, and then, you know, I'll sit here. It doesn't do us any good to both be sitting in the blind. And while he went up there, he wasn't gone for 10 minutes, and that big herd bull that I hadn't even got a chance to really see, he came, split off his cows and came down for a quick drink, and I just happened to be there at just the perfect time and got drawn back on him and didn't realize which bull it was until I got one arrow in him, and he ran out there 20 more yards and let me get a second shot in him too, and both shots hit him perfect. But as soon as that second, he turned broadside for that second shot, boy, I realized it was definitely the bull that Sean was talking about from the night before, and I got pretty nervous. I had difficulty finding him in my rangefinder. I got shaking a little bit, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, he's just an absolute monarch. We got up there and got to check him out, and I just dropped to my knees. I mean, he is just as beautiful as a slick six can get. So.
Beautiful bull, and you said he's right at 390 gross?
Yeah, we green grossed him out at 389, and obviously he's got some shrinkage for that. And what's really impressive to me is that he got that with only a 33-inch spread.
Wow, so that's awesome. Long points.
Yeah, he got 21 and change on his seconds, and you know, 23, 24-inch swords and 53-inch main beams, and he's only got 2 bottom teeth left in his head, so he's you know, I don't know what age that's going to put him at, somewhere between probably the 9.5 and 11.5, but definitely on the last years of his life, which is just the coolest thing to me. So
that is phenomenal. And you know, does that far exceed your expectations that you were thinking with that tag? I mean, in the unit that you were hunting, I mean, the bulls like that, you know, is that a once every couple of years they shoot a bull like that, or is that like a once every 10 years type of thing?
I'll tell you what, for public land, that definitely far exceeds what I could have ever expected. I went into that unit, and in fact, going into that day, I hate to just play the game of inches, but you know, we were really kind of hoping to get something. Biggest bull I've ever shot in my life was in the 320s with a bow, so I was, you know, really wanting something that represented the area, and you know, maybe a 330 or 340 bull, and we didn't expect anything like that. But obviously, going in there and doing a little scouting, you got to see some higher quality of bulls, and it seems like in that unit, maybe 1 or 2 close to that caliber usually come off of some of the private land, and some of the outfitters have one like that kind of mapped out. So it far exceeds what I thought we were going to be able to get done, and definitely had a stroke of luck. So.
That's awesome. So your rut report, obviously your hunt ended short, but what else, have you been back out, or what have you been hearing as far as elk bugling, and what is, you know, your prediction for the rest of the season for the other guys out in Wyoming chasing bulls around?
Yeah, I gotta say I've been pretty pleasantly surprised by the amount of kind of comments that we've got on some good rut activity. You know, obviously I was kind of in there during the pre-rut where we got, you know, some of the bigger bulls rounding up cows that aren't necessarily in estrus yet, but and then we still had some bachelor groups going on with some of the smaller bulls. But I would say in the years past, it seems like we've had a good streak in the past 3 or 4 years of a really late rut, even a rut that has pushed into kind of the earlier part of October, and everybody's been pretty frustrated around Wyoming the last 3 to 4 years. But this year, I got to say, from what I'm seeing, it seems like we're having a little bit earlier rut activity. Everything is kind of lining back up where it should be, and looking at the moon phase and some of the cool weather coming in, I would say, man, that third week of September coming up here is probably just going to be money. I mean, that's nobody ever really knows, but that it's all shaping out to like we're not going to have a late rut like usual, in my opinion.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. Any tips that you would give guys out there hitting the woods? I noticed that you realized that those elk weren't hitting your cameras, and you kind of disappeared, and you guys knew that you had to, one tip from hearing your story is that, you have to figure out what they're doing, and it looks like you guys did that. You made the best decision that you could make, best guess that what, the wallow that you had found was hot and that something was going to show up there.
Yeah.
And that's a great tip for guys to be able to adapt. But any other tips that you would think of that you could give?
Something that I've learned over the past couple of years is definitely not underestimating the effectiveness of those tree stand and wallow hunts and sitting in a ground blind for early September. I mean, especially if you want to kill a big bull. I mean, you end up just beating your head against the wall trying to call a good bull away from his cows. I know that I have for many years in a row, and not really knowing what I was doing. So that and obviously, especially on public land, a lot of these elk just get super savvy to calling, and then an elk with cows obviously doesn't always want to mess with anything, and he's pretty content with his harem that he's got. So going in there and trying to get on a herd bull with cows and start squawking away on a cow call usually has a reverse effect, and it's not going to work out well for you. That's
right. I think that's a huge tip.
Yeah, so we've usually tried to, if you got an elk bugle, and let him do his thing and let him keep giving away his position to you, and try to get sneaky and play the wind and just slip in there kind of undetected. The less that they know about where you are, whether they think you're an elk or a hunter, the better. So, I mean, that's something I've learned over the past couple of years. And if you're looking for a smaller bull or satellite bull, and the really exciting elk hunt where you're trying to get elk coming into a call, then, the later on in September, and, hit those cow calls and have some fun with it. But you got a herd bull bugling that's probably got some cows, and just try to remain quiet and do some sneaking on them, and we had plenty of good opportunity of doing that during that week too. So with my I definitely wouldn't consider myself an expert, but that's just my opinion and some things I've learned over the past couple of years, and that definitely helped us be successful this year.
Yeah, for sure. And your buddy shot a big giant bull too. Definitely recommend the listeners check out your Instagram page. And tell me what your thoughts are, or your outlook on the mule deer in Wyoming this year. How are they looking?
Well, personally, obviously, I haven't had the time to scout mule deer as much as I have. I think, in my opinion, we have a lot of good bucks that did still make it through the winter. I think that we might have had some higher amount of die-off kind of over in some of eastern Wyoming than what people think, and maybe less die-off over in western Wyoming. So I know a lot of guys that are over there scouting that western side of the state and have turned up some really good bucks so far. Obviously, some of the older age class and the fawns probably had a rough winter, and we're going to pay for that in the years to come. But it seems to be looking pretty good from everybody that I've talked to. I don't think the die-off over on the western side of the state is quite as bad, and I would still expect some big bucks to come out of there on some of the higher age classes. But I'm not really sure how they did with antler growth as far as the moisture. Kind of I can't give a great opinion because I'm out here in the desert side of things. We had a very dry summer when some of those mule deer and antelope really needed it. so that's kind of unfortunate to see. I think the elk did great, but antler growth kind of in the lower elevations didn't seem to be as impressive as I thought it would be. But I'm really excited to see what actually comes out of that western side, and to see if the predictions are as bad as they were. But I think we definitely had the fawn mortality is going to be by far the worst, and we're going to have some rough years to come. But
okay, KUIU is a sponsor of this podcast. I noticed in a lot of your photos you're wearing KUIU gear for your elk hunt. What clothing and what gear did you choose to go with?
I've been a firm believer that KUIU stuff. Obviously, I'm not sponsored by anybody or anything, but for the money, that stuff has been the highest performing kind of clothing and gear that I've used, and I've been really impressed by it. And it did very well for us, especially kind of having some of those really lightweight options for some of the warmer weather hunts. That was really handy. So definitely did very well. Blends in great to the environment that we were in, and that's definitely always my go-to. So for the weight and the weatherproofing that stuff has, and plus they got some great sales, so it seemed to work out.
Right on, man. Well, I really appreciate your information. Give us a report, and congratulations on a bull of a lifetime. And I guess the listeners will just have to go to your Instagram page to see what else you have up your sleeve with the other bull that your hunting partner killed. And and 2 bulls like that in a matter of days is an unbelievable accomplishment. So congratulations. And would you give me your Instagram handle one more time so the listeners have it?
My personal one is 307 Horn Hunter. Obviously kind of the shed hunting thing that we do, and then our business page, which has a lot of that same stuff, and shows a lot of what of our Wyoming ambassadors have been knocking down this year is at Shednecks. So
awesome. Well, God bless you, man, and keep up the good work, and thanks for sharing your knowledge here with us.
Jay, thanks so much, man. I appreciate the opportunity, and good luck to everybody this season.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Yep, bye.